Hey guys, so what you're looking at now is a proposal to combine the eastern counties of Oregon, the most eastern counties of Oregon, with Idaho. And if you're wondering why do these people want to do this, well, we have this image of Oregon largely based on Portland. We think of Oregon as kind of being this liberal bastion of like weirdness, Portlandia, probably definitely absolutely fed into this. But the reality of it is that the Pacific Northwest, when you move a little further in from the metropolitan areas like Seattle and Portland, it doesn't even become like conservative. It becomes militant right wing. We're talking about militia groups. So by the time you get to Idaho, you're basically in a militia stronghold there, right? I'm talking about the anti-government types. So most of the population of Oregon, it does live on the western coast, but the eastern portion, it becomes much more rural, much more, I don't even want to say conservative, aggressively right-wing, right? So they're like, we're not really being represented by the state of Oregon. And these Western elites are keeping us from being heard. So we want to combine with Idaho. This is really nothing new. So I think, and I don't know if anyone else did this, you look at a map of the United States during the Civil War, and you're like, okay, so here are the Union states, and here are the Southern states. And the Union states, they didn't have slavery, and the Southern states did. And the ones that didn't have slavery, good. Okay, well, yeah, slavery's bad. I'm black. I'm descendant of slaves, not a good thing. I don't want to, glad not a slave. But just because they didn't have slavery doesn't mean they weren't racist as hell. So Oregon becomes a state in 1859, and it enters the Union as a non-slave state. But its entrance into the Union, it excludes blacks. It is literally a whites-only white haven. This actually existed, these laws, these policies, laws, whatever, to exclude blacks existed long before the Oregon entered the Union, when it was still a territory. Once again, these anti-slavery laws aren't pro-black. They're actually anti-black. So let's start with some. You have the Lash Law, which was passed in 1844. And this stated that black people who tried to settle in Oregon would be whipped 20 to 30 times every 6 months until they left. I don't know why, just the visualization of, well, come on, Toby, time to take your lashes. All right, boss. Dark humor, but still kind of funny. As long as you can take that ass whooping every 6 months, you're good to go. The law was later changed to require forced labor instead of whipping. So basically, slavery. You either got, originally we're going to whip you, but then now we're just going to enslave you. Then in 1849, there's the exclusion laws passed in September of 1849, and this prohibited black people from settling in Oregon altogether. Then there's the 1857 exclusion law. And these laws weren't repealed until 1926. The last black exclusion law was passed in 1926. So if you go to Oregon and you're like, there are no black people here, well, that's part of it. So what the current Oregonians are doing, I think that's what you call someone from Oregon, the current Oregonians are doing is basically what they've been doing since day one. This is their legacy. Now, you have Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. that is just looking to be acknowledged as full American citizens, and this is ludicrous, but since its very inception, Oregon or Oregonians don't want to play by the rules at all. And this is a serious thing. I've heard various people say there's no way it can happen. Other people say it could. If it does happen, it wouldn't really surprise me. There is a kind of a what's good for me, wrong for you. They can, they're going to make sure they're represented in their particular way. I mean, it's kind of gerrymandering at the federal level. But let's just imagine if, for example, black people wanted to do something like this. Now, what I mean is I'm going to show you a map of the counties that have a 50% or greater black population. Now, imagine if these counties, let's say those counties that border Mississippi, wanted to join Mississippi, pushing the black population above 50% in Mississippi. Or what if these black counties, even ones that are in different states, wanted to split off because they don't believe they're being represented by their state? This is actually pretty accurate, because you can say with about an 85 to 90 degree certainty that if you come across a black person in the United States, they're going to be a Democrat. But then on top of that, when you look at some of the laws that are passed in the South, they are totally against the interests of black people. Now, albeit they're also totally against the interests of a lot of the white population. But, you know, the thing about it is that a lot of the white population in the South, they will go along with laws that hurt them as long as it hurts their black neighbors just slightly more. Thus, the history of the United States. Anyway, just kind of wanted to share this with you guys. Oh, and one thing, what this all reminds me of, because I know there may be some people who watch this video and bring up various left-wing protests that have occurred in cities, including the Pacific Northwest. And they'll say, well, these violent protesters and Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Well, I'll say what Black Lives Matter, 95% of the protests were actually peaceful. And when it comes to Antifa, Antifa is not an organization, but it's literally an anti-fascist movement. But when actions of violence are occurring, well, let's just say they learned it from the white militia groups first. It kind of reminds me of that old drug commercial where the kid comes across his father's weed stash, and his father's like, where did you learn to smoke weed? Well, where did you learn to do this violence? Thank you.
Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.